This is where we begin the digestive process by secreting digestive enzymes. We've got different glands in the mouth. The submandibular parotid glands secrete amylase, which is an enzyme that helps us begin to break down carbohydrates. We also have teeth. If you've got them, right, they chew the food, and that physical mechanical action of chewing starts to break down the food physically. These things happening in the mouth, and as we go through the esophagus down and hit the stomach, we're now releasing acid, and we're releasing proteolytic enzymes. So these are enzymes that break down proteins. So this is where a lot of our protein digestion begins, is specifically in the stomach itself before things are dumped into the small intestine. Once things are dumped into the small intestine, this is actually where the pancreas comes into play, because the pancreas will secrete something called bicarbonate, H2CO3 or bicarbonate, and this neutralizes the acid from the stomach so that the acid from the stomach is not damaging your small intestine and eroding that lining. So the pancreas becomes what we call an accessory organ or an aid to digestion. And once we hit that small intestine, the liver and the gallbladder also kick in with bile. And bile is a salt that helps to emulsify or surround your fat. So how do we digest our fat? We have to have enough bile for that to happen. So bile, basically it wraps around vitamins A, D, E, and K, the different types of fats that you eat in your diet, like omega-3 and monounsaturated fats, etc. And it wraps around them, making them water soluble so that you can absorb them with great efficiency. So if you've got liver or gallbladder problems, a lot of times, people go to the GI doctor because they're having digestive issues. They do a scope, they look at the GI tract, but they fail to look at the gallbladder, the liver, or the pancreas. So don't forget about these accessory organs to digestion. It's important to take them into consideration as well. So once we make it through the small intestine, which is where a lot of digestion and extrapolation of vitamins and minerals and absorption of vitamins and minerals occurs, we hit the large intestine. And so that large intestine coming up, over, and down, the large intestine's job is to continue to break down food, but it's really to regulate water. It's a water balancing organ as well, so it helps to regulate, maintain water balance and hydration, but also helps to form stool so that we can pass the toxins out, keep the nutrients in. So again, these are just general fundamental things that you should be aware of, because most problems for GI tract or digestion disruption begin with what you put in your mouth. And so most people dismiss that part, and unfortunately most doctors dismiss that part. They'll tell you food doesn't have anything to do with this problem, and then they'll want to put you on an antacid or an antibiotic or a steroid or a pain relief medication, and they're not really asking why the GI tract is struggling with symptoms. Remember, what you put in, it's the thing you do every day. Most people 3 times a day. You subject yourself to eating so that you can get nourishment, but if the very foods you're eating are acting like poisons or they're damaging to you, you can take on a host of different types of symptoms regardless. And so don't forget that part. You've got to think about what's going in. Now let's start with some home remedies for digestion from an indigestion and heartburn perspective. So there's some very easy things and free things that you should do if you struggle on this front. And we'll start over here on the right. One of them is intermittent fasting. The gut cells, the GI tract cells, are brand new. Every 2 to 7 days you have a brand new lining. And so one of the things that people have gotten into the habit of doing, and we can thank mainstream medicine and nutrition for this, is people are told that they need to eat 6 small meals a day, or they need to eat square balanced meals all day long. And so there's this perception that if you're not eating every few hours, you're somehow going to become hypoglycemic and get sick from that. And that the reality is that humans evolved fasting, right? You've heard the term feast or famine. Because when food was available, we would eat it, and when it wasn't available, sometimes we'd have to go days before we got food. And so intermittent fasting is a way you can implement a fasting strategy in your day-to-day lifestyle that can be very, very beneficial, because when you give your gut a break, It's just like exercise. You don't exercise 3 times a day or 6 times a day. Your body would start to break down. Your muscles and your joints would be, they would be in rebellion, so to speak. So you've got to give your digestive tract some time off as well. You need to give it a vacation. And so intermittent fasting can be very, very helpful. These cells heal very quickly. So if you've got heartburn or if you've got acid reflux, remember, healing can occur very fast in the GI tract. Think about it. If you've ever gotten a cut or sore in your mouth, how quickly those things heal. It's because these are the same cells. They turn over very, very quickly. So intermittent fasting gives them the capacity to heal because it gives your gut a break. And if there are foods in your diet that you're eating that are responsible for your indigestion or for your heartburn, you're giving them a break. You're giving your gut a break from those foods as well. And this is what allows you to start paying attention to how food might be affecting you when you eat it. So intermittent fasting, I recommend, it's easy. Most people can do a 16-8 intermittent fast. That's where you pick an 8-hour window over your course of your day, fit all your meals in that 8-hour window, which for most people is typically an early dinner and a late kind of brunch, if you will, or a very late breakfast. And then there's this 8-hour period in the course of the day where you can fit your meals, but then you have the 16-hour gap where you're not eating, and that gives your gut rest. Number 2, very free, very common solution is to eat smaller portions. How many times have you been with somebody, whether it be a family member going to a restaurant where the plate comes out and the servings are massive, right? The servings could feed probably 4 people, and then they eat the whole plate. They clean their plate. And then after the dinner, they're like, oh, heartburn, digestion. They're so full and they're so bloated. Eat smaller portions. I mean, we've gravitated toward and adapted toward thinking more is better. But in reality, when it comes to food, smaller portions can sometimes make the difference, because sometimes it's not the food that you're eating, but it's the quantity that you're eating. You're putting too much in your gut, and your gut's not robust or strong enough to handle the quantity you're putting in. So just eating smaller portions can solve it for many people. Another one is bitters. Bitters stimulate digestion. So they stimulate the flow of digestive juices. And a lot of people skip this part because bitters don't taste very good, right? So you think of bitters, you think of like those dark greens in a salad. And again, without them, some people really have a hard time because their guts are not being stimulated. Their digestive juices aren't being stimulated. So bitters can be very helpful for many people. So this is one of the reasons why some people really benefit from that pre-dinner salad, if you will. Now, this is a tip if you struggle indigestion. Also, we can do fermented foods. Fermented foods provide bifidobacteria, lactobacillus. Think of these as really more than anything, think of them as probiotics. And what do these guys do? Probiotics, they actually help with digestion. They actually help us digest and break down our food. It's not just your stomach and your intestines making acids and enzymes. It's the bacteria that live inside of you, the friendly flora that actually help you break down the foods that you eat. And so fermented foods provide a robust source of probiotics in the diet that can be very, very helpful and supportive of your ability to digest. The other is digestive enzymes. Now, this is one that, especially many of you watching the show are gluten sensitive. You've got, decades of damage that were caused by gluten to your GI tract. And so one of the hallmarks of gluten-induced gut damage is a low capacity to produce digestive enzymes. And so a lot of you do really, really well taking an enzyme supplement. Now, one of the questions I commonly get on this one is, if I take a digestive enzyme, will it reduce my body's ability to make digestive enzymes? And the answer there is absolutely not. Taking digestive enzymes will not lower your body's ability to make them. Remember, when you eat real food, when you eat whole food, many of your plants and vegetables and fruits have enzymes in them. Think of pineapple, the bromelain, which is an enzyme in pineapple. When you eat a really ripe and good pineapple, it almost dissolves in your mouth. That's the enzyme in the pineapple helping you break that food down. So you take natural enzymes from foods that you eat all the time, and those don't inhibit your ability to make enzymes either. So taking digestive supplements are not going to wreck your body's ability to make its own enzymes. Now, some other things that you can do. One of the things that we sometimes see, and this isn't true of everyone, but it can be true, especially, again, I'm coming back to people who are new to the gluten-free diet. Their guts are a mess. They're just trying to restore and recapture their health. It's to avoid food combining, because carb, fats, and proteins, when you put all those things together, sometimes that can be a little too much for your gut to handle when it's compromised. Okay, if your gut is robust and healthy, this shouldn't be an issue, but many of you don't have robust, healthy guts, so keep this in mind. So don't mix sugars or fruits, right, and meats. Bad idea. Naturally speaking, carbohydrates, if you will, generally they come by themselves in the diet. Meat and, I should say, proteins typically come with fat. So if we look at where that comes from, protein generally comes from meat, although you get some protein from vegetables as well. But most of your vegetables have a very low amount of carbs and really higher quantities of proteins. And then you have your fruits, which are mostly carbs. And then you have nuts, which are mostly fat, but a little bit of protein. And then you have your meats, which is mostly protein and fat. So try keeping and separating out those groups. Some people find that when they sit down for a meal, if they just eat the serving of meat, they do really well. Or if they just eat the salad, they do really well. But when they start trying to combine these different things, it really gives them indigestion or heartburn. So keep that in mind. One of the other things that you might consider doing is betaine hydrochloride. Now, betaine hydrochloride is a supplemental acid that you can take orally 10 minutes or so before you eat. And where this can really be helpful is in digestion of protein. Now, one of the things that we see, genetically speaking, is that people with A and AB blood types don't have robust stomach acid production. So think of this as not a weakness so much as it's just not a strength, right? A's and ABs don't have robust protein digestion capacity, so they generally tend to do better with much less animal protein and much more vegetables. This is actually, in my opinion, one of the reasons why we see a huge split or dichotomy in the general population, because some people say, look, I went vegetarian and I feel fantastic, it's the best I've ever felt in my life, and others say, I could never go vegetarian, I have to get plenty of meat. I'm one of those. But a lot of times it has to do with genetically with your blood type, and this is actually linked to your capacity, your ability to produce stomach acid. And so when you're a low stomach acid producer, if you put a bunch of protein on the stomach, you're not going to digest it very well, and that protein's going to lock you up. It's going to constipate you, and it's going to create a putrefaction process. That protein's basically going to start rotting inside of you because you lack the robustness to break it all down. Now, I'm not saying that type A's and ABs should never eat protein. I'm just simply saying if you are, you might want to consider using an acid supplement if you're going to eat an animal protein at your meal. Some people also don't, if they don't want to take an acid supplement, do well with apple cider vinegar or ACV because it's a mild acid. So putting it down before you eat might be very, very helpful to get some acid in that stomach going to help break that food down. Probiotics as well. Now, I mentioned over here fermented foods could be beneficial for the probiotic effect. Well, so can taking oral probiotic supplements because, again, going back to what I said earlier, probiotics help and aid with digestion. One of the other factors that we see here is people don't get adequate rest. Why is that important? Because if you're not sleeping enough, this is going to increase your stress. And ultimately, people that have poor digestion and reflux, a lot of them are stressed out. And what this does is it drives the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight nervous system. It's the part of your autonomic nervous system that helps you to escape danger. It's when you make a lot of extra adrenaline, noradrenaline, what are called the catecholamines, these hormones that drive the stress response. Well, when we're trying to digest, we don't want to be driving the stress response. We want to be relaxed, right? We want to be calm. And so if we're not getting enough sleep, we're going to be more stressed out. If we hate our job, we're going to be stressed out. If we're in a bad relationship, we're going to be more stressed out. If we hurt all the time, we're going to be more stressed out. And again, that's going to drive sympathetic, which is the opposite of good digestion. So it's very, very important that you get enough sleep and that you also, you're looking at your stress and monitoring your stress as a whole and making sure that you're doing everything you can to keep it at a normal level, especially before eating time. And then we have exercise. Exercise, movement is so important. So many people develop problems because they're sedentary. When the body's sedentary, the bowels will slow down. They won't move and they won't work as well. Remember, when you move, structurally, physically, when you move, your tailbone, which is that bone shaped like a triangle at the base of your spine, it moves in a figure 8 motion when you walk. And so what happens is there's 8 holes in that tailbone that contain nerves from your spinal cord, and these nerves, they have a pumping action on your spinal cord that creates the circulation of cerebrospinal fluid. So that's part of something that helps your body detox. But these same nerves also, when you keep them in motion and you make sure they're not being compressed or pinched, or the muscles around them aren't shrinking, causing compression of the nerves. Many of these nerves traverse and feed your intestines. And so if you're inactive, you can actually develop a reduction of nerve energy flowing to the intestines, large and small, leading to a slower function, which leads to indigestion and heartburn. So again, everything on this list, minus the supplements you can do for free. And if you're doing all these things already, you might consider implementing some of these supplements into the course of your problem and see if they're not helpful.